it's Ingrid Blackburn. Welcome to the Happy Little Stampers Christmas series. Here you can see we created a fun little scene using the Christmas Joy stamp set. I love the stamp set. It's got some really great images and some fun mixed sentiments. I love it when they mix fonts with some script and some bold and some skinny. It's got a great versatility to it. So to get started, I needed a couple of masks. So I stamped out the main tree from this stamp set, and I cut out a couple different shapes. I cut out the tree part, and then I also cut out the trunk. I also did the same with the star, which we're going to use later on. And to get started, you want to make sure that your piece of paper is secured. I'm using 140-pound cardstock, watercolor cardstock, actually. And that is to give me a real smooth, effortless blend. I love the way that inks blend on that type of a cardstock. We're going to use archival ink to stamp out our trees. And you can see here I kind of created my scene after creating some snow drifts by just using some copy paper. Once I have everything kind of an idea of where it's going to go, I'm going to start to stamp the tree down. So I want to get that inked up. I need to move my trees that I had there. And I'm going to vary the heights when I go ahead and stamp these. You can see here I have the trunk that's a little bit down into the snowdrift right there, and that way the tree appears as if it's coming from behind. I laid a mask down over that, and now I'm going to stamp the other tree behind and going off the scene itself. And this way it gives it a little bit of a continual flow and makes it look a little more realistic. Going to add the other snowdrift, and I'm going to do the same on the other side, varying the heights. And it also kind of gives it a little bit of different contrast when you have different heights on there. And then once that's done, we're going to stamp the main tree down to the bottom and add the star. Now those little white trees that you saw me use when I was laying out my scene, I went ahead and stamped those onto some full sheet label paper that I got. Avery, I just got that at Staples, and I just use that as masks. I can peel away the back, and it's kind of a repositionable mask, which is great because if you have larger images, you get big sheets to use. There's also masking paper and post-it paper and all sorts of things that you can use. But ideally, I had 4 different ones, and I also cut one in the shape of the tree with the garland on it as well. And the star. Now the star you'll see me struggle a little with the star as I do a little bit of sponging. And there's the fancy tree, the tree with the garland. So we're going to stamp that on the bottom. The star actually started to come off a lot, so I played with that a lot. This tree I'm stamping in front of, and that's why I lifted up that part of the snow bank. And because I want that to be actually sitting in the snow, whereas all the other trees are kind of behind the hills. So that's the only difference with that tree. Now you can see that I have my snow drifts. I have the positive and the negative. It's important that you keep both. To do our snow drifts, we're going to sponge a little bit of distress ink, and we're using Tumble Gloss, which is the lightest shade of blue that Ranger makes. I'm creating just an ever so slightly light blue layer. It's the teeniest little layer right there, and that's just to help separate it actually from the other snowdrift. To really make snowdrifts look realistic, you're going to actually stamp your color from the bottom of the drift, not necessarily the top. So you can see here in the bottom left corner and the right corner, I'm adding some real light shading using that distress ink, and that just kind of gives it the appearance of a little bit of depth, or maybe, you know, a shadow in the snow, and that's really what you see. Next time you are outside and you're looking at snowdrifts, you'll notice that there are peaks and valleys and drifts, and that's really what that shading is looking to achieve. So now I have the bottom one down, and then I have the positive of the bottom drift down at the bottom and the negative at the top for the other drift, and I'm going to do the same. And I'm really creating a deeper kind of like shadow there right in that corner. You want to keep your sponging really light, and the watercolor paper really helps you with that. I added a little bit more heavy shadowing around the tree there. I did actually originally hold my drift down so there's a slight line, and that just kind of helps give it a little bit of variety and some interest there. It is important that you have those masks over your trees when you are doing some of that sponging. You didn't really need it on the upper trees when you're doing the sponging of the drifts, but you did on the bottom one. So now I'm adding a little bit of color to the sky. I always work light to dark here. So I'm starting with tumble glass and broken china, and I'm just kind of adding a real light layer of color. You'll see me here, I'm adding that star back up. Remember me saying that it kept coming off? Yeah, I battled with that star the whole time, and towards the end I didn't even leave it on, I just went around the star. When you're doing a sky, one of the things that I recommend is that you leave a little bit of white in there. So what I like to do is with my lightest shade, that's where I add the most color. I don't go very heavy, and I really do it in different layers because I just kind of let that build up. You are unable to take away, but you can definitely add color to it if you need it to be darker. So I spend the most time with actually the tumble glass, and I kind of hold down my masks too, even though they stick to the paper. You know, watercolor paper is not always the most friendly surface, so you want to kind of hold those in place. And then I start to add some darker colors. Here I have Blueprint Sketch that's going down, and I also use Stormy Sky as another blue. You can see that I added the most color to the right and also at the perimeter. If you look at the final project at the end, you'll notice there is just kind of a little bit of white in the sky, and that is just to kind of give it that winter feel as if we have a little bit of a snow blizzard. It kind of works with you. So just kind of keep that in mind. I like to go a little darker on one side. It just kind of gives it a little bit more interest, as if the light is coming from the opposite side. So here's the big reveal. We're going to pull our masks away and look at that. That sky is gorgeous. I love winter cards. I'm going to take the little masks off the trees, and then now our next task is going to be to actually add the color in from the forest. So we're going to start off by adding some different greens, and we're going to take those masks. Remember, we cut them in the way beginning, and we're going to reposition our snow drifts because we don't want, because remember our trunks, they go longer than the actual image that we have stamped there because those trees are behind the drifts. So I'm going to start off with that, and then I'm just going to take some Gathered Twigs, which is one of the distress colors by Ranger, and we're going to fill in all of those trunks at once. You're just going to get it till it's the right shade that you're looking for. And then once you have that complete, we're going to do the same with the tops of the trees. Now I chose to use primarily two different greens. I did one in peeled paint and one in forest moss. One has a little, they're both earthy colors, but one is definitely much darker, and that's the forest moss. And I kind of did two on each side just to have a little bit of variation. And then when I did the decorated tree, the one that has the garland on it, I started off with a little bit of peeled paint on that one, and then I actually brought in a little bit of pine needles, and that color is a little bit more of a blue-green, but mixed with the earthy green, it has a nice different shade, and that just kind of helps that one tree to stand out. Now for the star here, you can see I have a little tiny mask there, and this is mustard seed, and that's Ranger's brightest yellow that they have. Just want to get that nice and vibrant, and you can see how quick it goes. Now I keep using the word mask, but in using these pieces where I actually have the shape cut out, that's actually creating my own stencil. I love how this turned out, but notice at the bottom that I forgot about my post-it note at the bottom when I did my sponging. So I have to trim that part off, but I love the way this turned out. So we have this really great background, but we need to add a little bit more. We're going to end up adding that greeting right there. It says Joy to the World, and we're going to end up embossing that. But before we do that, I want this to have a real snowy feel to it. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. I'm using a product called Pro White by Daler Rowney and a toothbrush. I'm going to shake that up really good, and this is a product that a lot of people who use markers and do a lot of coloring and things like that, they use this because it's a bleed-proof white. And that means that when you put it over something, you're not going to actually see that color bleed through it. So it's going to remain nice and white. I'm going to use my finger, and this is just a toothbrush that I actually got on an airplane, believe it or not. Just a very inexpensive toothbrush. And I just dip that in and then just kind of flick or kind of spritz that onto my project. You can also do this with a paintbrush, but I don't want to use my good paint brushes in this material. It is a water-soluble material or paint, medium I should say, and you just want to clean that really quickly when you're done. Once it's dried, I'm just dipping this into some embossing powder. I want to make sure that nothing's sticking. If it is, just make sure to use a heat tool and just get that completely dried. I'm using the Misty just to position my greeting. I have that inked up with some Versamark ink. And then we'll go ahead and dip that back into some silver embossing powder, and we'll get that heat set. Now, I love embossing on this, and silver is really the perfect color. Gold would be a little awkward, I think, just because we have a lot of cool tones here. So it really turned out really great, and I probably could have even put that joy on maybe a vellum banner or something that would still allow the color to shine through, but I had a lot of space there. I'm using some Tombow Mono multi-glue here, and I added a little bit of fun foam there just to kind of pop the scene up. Add a little bit of a white border around, and there you go. Doesn't that look great? I love it. It's a wonderful card. Thanks so much for joining me. Here are some close-ups, and I really hope you learned a little something about how to create your snowdrifts, and this is a really fun stamp set. If you're interested in the stamp set, the link is in the See More section below, and there's also a link at the very end of this video. And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, be sure to do so. I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Have a very Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.